In this episode of Mind the Gap, Michael Comyn returns to Stoicism to address a growing concern. A philosophy rooted in self-restraint, moral responsibility, and shared humanity is increasingly being misused in public discourse, repackaged by far-right ideologues, misogynistic communities, and incel cultures as emotional detachment, grievance, and false strength. This episode is not about controversy, but clarification, and a return to what the Stoics actually taught. Here's Michael.
Welcome to this week's episode. At its core, Stoicism serves as a foundation for personal growth and resilience. It urges us to master our inner lives. When properly understood, it fosters genuine strength and responsibility. If you've been with Mind the Gap for a while, you know the conversation has grown. We've looked at emotional intelligence, psychology, leadership, trauma, and what it means to live well in a complicated world. So it's fair to ask, why come back to the Stoics now? We live in a fast-moving digital age where outrage cycles reward instant reaction and punish reflection. The pressure is always to respond, to perform, to take a side. The noise gets louder. Steadiness gets harder. Stoicism was never a finish line. It was always a foundation, a way to steady ourselves before life asked harder questions. The later seasons didn't replace Stoicism. They tested it, they stretched it, and they brought it into conversation with what we know now. And good Stoicism stands up to that. But right now, it's time to look at Stoicism again. Not because it's failed, but because it's being misused. If you look up Stoicism today, especially online, you'll find thoughtful writing. But you'll also find something else. A version flattened into slogans. A version shaped by algorithms, not reflection.
Keep calm and stay stoic.
That phrase sounds harmless, but it quietly strips Stoicism of its moral depth. Epictetus never spoke about staying calm for appearances. He spoke about mastery of self. Another common distortion is the idea that Stoicism means suppressing emotion, as if detachment were a goal rather than emotional resilience. In more severe cases, Stoicism becomes an excuse to avoid responsibility. Emotional reactions get labelled as weakness. Anger gets dressed up as insight. That's not accidental. Any philosophy that emphasizes discipline and self-control will attract people who feel wounded or lost. In a world that never slows down, Stoicism can be mistaken for permission to harden instead of to heal. And that's where things start to go wrong. The Stoics themselves were very clear about where strength begins. Epictetus, who began life as a slave and understood power from the inside out, said,
No man is free who is not master of himself.
That line is quoted often. It's examined far less. It does not say, master of others. It does not say, immune to feeling, and it does not say, entitled to superiority. It says, master of oneself. Stoicism isn't about dominance. It's about responsibility. But in some modern versions, Stoicism gets used as armour, a way to avoid vulnerability, a way to justify contempt, a shortcut to feeling superior without doing the hard work of looking inwards. Marcus Aurelius would have recognised that temptation. Writing privately to himself, not to an audience, he reminds himself,
Begin the morning by saying to yourself, I shall meet with interference, ingratitude, insolence, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness. All of them are due to ignorance of what is good or evil.
Notice what Marcus does not do. He does not personalise hostility. He does not imagine himself under attack, and he does not turn difficulty into a grievance. He explains bad behaviour without becoming bitter. Grievance thinking depends on the belief that others are deliberately denying you what you deserve. Stoicism asks a more uncomfortable question. What is mine to govern here? That isn't weakness. That's what it means to grow up. Seneca was even clearer about anger.
Anger, if not restrained, is frequently more hurtful to us than the injury that provokes it.
Stoicism does not glorify rage. It does not frame bitterness as truth-telling. It treats unexamined anger as a distortion of judgment. This is where so much modern Stoicism quietly misses the mark. The image of the emotionally numb marble statue Stoic is tempting for people who feel overwhelmed or humiliated. But it isn't Stoicism. The Stoics did not aim to feel nothing, they aimed to feel appropriately. Epictetus reminds us,
If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation.
that isn't self-blame, it's self-honesty. Stoicism doesn't hand off responsibility for your inner life. That alone sets it apart from ways of thinking built on blame. This is also where we need to be very clear about misogyny. There is nothing in classical Stoicism that supports contempt for women. None. Stoic virtue was never gendered. Musonius Rufus stated it plainly.
Women as well as men have received from the gods the gift of reason.
That's 1st century Stoicism. If Stoicism is used to frame women as adversaries, distractions, or rewards, it has lost its foundation. That isn't ancient wisdom. That's modern resentment dressed up in old words. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself again and again,
My nature is rational and social.
Stoicism isn't a bunker. It isn't withdrawal or isolation. It isn't about feeling above others. It's about learning to live well with people without losing your character. Which brings us to something important. There is a difference between strength and hardness. Strength allows steadiness without cruelty. Hardness shuts down to avoid vulnerability. Strength can tolerate discomfort. Hardness cannot. Seneca understood this.
No one is more worthy of compassion than a person who has lost it for himself.
That line quietly undoes contempt. Stoicism isn't about being untouchable. It's about being trustworthy. Which is why the Stoics repeatedly warned against putting philosophy on display. Live it instead. So let me end with this. Stoicism isn't something you announce. It isn't a label you wear. It isn't a way to explain why the world should expect less from you. Stoicism only shows up in how you act. If you want to know whether Stoicism is helping you or just making you harder, ask yourself this. Does it make you more responsible for your reactions or more convinced that others are to blame? Does it help you tolerate frustration without contempt? Or does it give you better language for resentment? Does it make you more capable of dignity, patience, and restraint in ordinary human relationships, especially the difficult ones? If it doesn't do these things, whatever you're practicing, it isn't Stoicism. Marcus Aurelius left himself a final test.
What does not make a man worse than he was before also does not make his life worse.
So here's the invitation. Go back to the source. Read slowly. Practice privately. Judge your philosophy not by how it feels in the moment, but by how it shapes the way you treat people when life gets hard. Because Stoicism was never meant to make you untouchable. It was meant to make you trustworthy. And that's the gap worth minding.
That was Mind the Gap with Michael Comyn. If you'd like to explore these ideas further, Michael's books Mind the Gap, The Next Station Is, and Between the Lines are all available on Amazon. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please follow the show, leave a rating or review, and share this episode with someone who might benefit from the conversation. Thanks for listening.